everyone. I'm Maddie here with Anime Fire, and I am talking with Tara Sands. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that you're here with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. What inspired you to become a voice actor?
I was basically I'm an actor, so this was just one component of the acting work I was doing many, many years ago. I was going on auditions for. I grew up near New York City, so I was going in high school. I started going on auditions in New York, and I didn't even know what a voiceover was. I was going on like theater auditions, commercials, voiceovers, TV, whatever they would let me do. I was like, I just want to work. Now I only do voiceovers, but I just kind of consider it another acting job. I don't necessarily, I differentiate them in terms of like the process and, if I can wear my pajamas or not. But, but yeah, I didn't set out to be a voice actor, but I'm happy this is where it ended up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have ended up becoming so many iconic characters in the time that you've been a voice actor. And one of those is Bulbasaur in Pokemon, which is amazing.
Very weird. It's very weird.
When you took on the role of Bulbasaur, did you know that Pokemon was going to become this like multi-generational phenomenon?
Oh, hell no. Yeah. So basically, and I'm sorry if people have heard me say this before. So basically, when we got cast to play different speaking roles on the show, so I was there playing the role of Melanie that day. And what I found out since is that the directors and writers and all, they didn't know which Pokemon were coming back. If you ask Michael Hagney, who did the first few episodes, a lot of the early episodes, he was like, oh, well, there's 150 of them. So I'm sure there's like a couple per episode. So Bulbasaur, they had me do because I was playing another role in that episode. And they're like, hey, try this. If I was bad at it, they would have replaced me. But they're like, while you're here, try this. So that day I did Bulbasaur and Oddish. I didn't know if I'd ever see them again. They didn't know if they'd ever see me again. So yeah, it was lucky in a lot of ways. That's why I don't really have much ego about it, because it was very I'm glad that I did well enough to continue to keep the job, but yeah, I can't have much of an ego about it when it was very just haphazard. Now today it's very different. They for the bigger Pokemon, they have auditions and callbacks and all that, but they know who the bigger roles are going into it.
Right. Yeah. That's such a fun story, though, that it's something that you just kind of ended up becoming, and it wasn't like anything huge, but it became huge.
Well, yeah, I was more excited about the girl that I was playing that day,
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when they asked me to try Bulbasaur, they said, "Hey, try this like bluish greenish thing," and I said, "What does he say?" Because the scripts were just said like react or whatever. I don't remember exactly what they said, and I said, "Well, I'm sorry, what does he say?" And he said Bulbasaur, and I said, "What else does he say?" And they said, "That's it," and I was like, "Weird show. Good luck." Yeah, but now I've come to kind of love that they don't speak words and that kids are open to their own interpretation of what they're saying. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And how does it feel looking back? Like, I said you said you don't have like much of an ego about it, but how does it feel to be part of something that is so multi-generational? Like for myself as a millennial, I grew up with the original Pokemon, and now I have an 8-year-old who is growing up with his version of Pokemon, and it's so big.
Amazing. It's so surreal. I feel so lucky to be part of it. I'm actually working on a podcast right now about 4Kids, the company that brought Pokemon to the U.S. and North America, and I can't believe I'm still talking about this. Like I'm reliving a lot of it, and it's really cool, and I feel just very lucky that there's not many shows that endure like that generationally, and I go to conventions and you'll meet like 3 generations of a family that all watch it together. And That's crazy. That's awesome. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird. I also, in some ways wish I could redo it. I didn't know this was my first anime job. I'm not always proud of like some of the work. I'm like, oh, can I re-record that now? I didn't know what I was doing. Um, I'd love a retake.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's weird that my first anime job is the one that will probably be the most watched of all my work because it's not necessarily the work that I'm most proud of. I'm like, oh God, I was just learning on the job. So
Hmm.
I would love a redo.
That would be fun to grab a couple of the original voice actors and
Oh, it'd be
record a
so
few
much fun.
scenes. That would be
Yeah,
really cool. That'd be so nostalgic for us too to hear you guys re-record those. That would be really fun. Um,
I would love to.
yeah. Now, have you caught them all? Have you caught Have you caught all the Pokemon?
I can't even name them all. There's over 1,000. And I did a funny thing last year with Megan Hollingshead, who played Nurse Joy and a lot of other roles, and where I was like holding up different Pokemon and like because I did like a what did I get? I got like a I just forgot the name of it. The box, the boxes at Christmas, and I'm obsessed with them. I can't believe where you open one every day.
Oh,
So
the calendars, I know
yeah, the
exactly what you're
advent
talking about.
calendars.
There you go. Yeah.
Advent calendar. And I would hold them up and I would make her come up with names for them. Or like if I knew the name, I don't even know how to pronounce most of the names because they're so complicated. And so, or I was doing like card openings and I was like, I don't know how to say this, but I got this one. So no, I have not caught. I've caught. I've barely made a dent in catching them all. Unfortunately, I need
Yeah.
to.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I remember when there were only 150, and then they just kept adding them.
Yeah, and that felt like a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And then as a kid watching the show, it was all about getting the words to the Poke Rap. Do you remember the Poke Rap where they would
Oh yeah,
all the
course.
Pokemon in order? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Catch them,
I
never
never
gotta
learned
catch
it.
them all.
I mean, doesn't hold a candle to the One Piece rap, but still.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
because what does? Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. That's impressive. That's impressive. Yes. I love that so much. And then shifting gears a little bit, you are the voice of Biscuit in Hunter x Hunter.
Oh, yeah.
And we love her so much.
I want to be her. I think I'd
Right.
like to switch places with her for at least a week.
Yes. How do you think that would go?
Well, honestly, it's just because she travels with masseuses that I'd want to switch places with her.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Is that the wrong reason? No,
No, not at
I
all.
love her. My favorite characters are the ones that are like equal parts girly and badass.
Mhm.
I've gotten to play a bunch of those, and I love that about her. I love that she, and her transformation. Which, if you haven't watched it, I won't give it away. But that was just so much fun, and that feels like a real classic anime to me. So that was a fun job. I hope we get to do that again one day.
Yeah.
Fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
Yes. Were you familiar with Hunter x Hunter before you took the role?
No, not at all. All I really knew about it, I had auditioned to play for the boys' parts for Gon and Killua early on, and I don't know why, but it was like I can usually kind of forget about auditions after I do them, but something about that I held on to. I was like, oh, bummer, I didn't get that, and then I saw what Christina and Erica did with them, and I was like, wow, okay, I get it, and then when the Biscuit job came around, I was like, oh, okay, it all kind of worked out. Like, this was the role that I'm really excited. Like, I play a lot of little boy voices and they hurt my throat. So I was so excited to play this character that I knew would not hurt at all.
Right.
And it just felt like a better fit. And I was like, okay, things just happen. Like, things fall into place. And so all I really knew about the show was when I had read the stuff for the other audition. But it's just so much fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. She's such a fun character too. And how has your experience been with the Hunter x Hunter fandom?
It's cool. I mean, it's a different fandom than Pokemon, which is so cool. Like, because it's sort of like, I'm trying to think what the right way to say it is. Pokemon is sort of there. Like, it's a anime for people who are into anime and also people who don't even know that it's an anime.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter x Hunter fans know it's an anime.
Mm-hmm.
It's a decision to watch it. Like, they found it. They've usually sought it out. it's a different kind of fandom. They're just as intense and hardcore, but it's not the nostalgia of Pokemon, which I think some people just like Pokemon for the nostalgia factor.
Mm-hmm.
This is a choice. When people are really into the show, they have made a decision to commit to this show. It's
Yes.
fun. I mean, it's super fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that comparison too, where, Hunter x Hunter is something you do have to seek out, and from experience, it is one that people said, hey, you should watch Hunter x Hunter if you haven't already. And so I
Yeah.
had to actively watch it. Whereas with Pokemon, growing up when I was, it came out in 98, I was
Yeah.
little. And so I didn't know it was an anime.
That's what was on TV. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And Hunter x Hunter is such a fun show. And
So much.
it's,
Well, now that it's on Netflix, all of a sudden there was one convention I was like, wow, there's a lot more Hunter fans. And someone said, oh, because it just went to Netflix. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, it
Yeah.
is so interesting because, before you had to, stay up late or record it on Toonami or whatever. I think that's where I don't know, maybe it was in more than that place. But it's just so interesting that it gains these things with whatever platform they're on gain new followings, which is just a sign of the times, really.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's really cool. Yeah, it is on Netflix. I don't know when it ended up on Netflix, but it's
Yeah,
there.
not that long ago. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
within the last year or so, I think.
Yeah. And then the manga is coming back, or it just started back up again.
We
So
keep hearing that. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see if the show will come back. I don't know. I mean, we don't know anything more than you. You guys usually know more than we do.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. So we'll just have to wait and see,
fingers crossed.
Yes, please. Yeah. And as you were saying earlier, you've done a lot of voiceover work. You've done TV, you've done radio, you've done video games and anime. Do you have one medium that you prefer over the others?
No, I think what keeps me loving it is that I bounce around so much. I think it keeps everything new. Like today, what did I do? Today I did like an educational game for little kids, and then I recorded an audiobook, very different modes. But that keeps me kind of interested and on my toes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I have to keep myself in check so that I don't bring stylistically this morning I was talking like this. And now for this book, I'm just reading it as like a regular person. And it's, so you have to like
Yeah.
adjust a little bit.
Right.
But it's sort of then that challenge I enjoy, like,
Mm-hmm.
because you can get lazy otherwise if you don't keep challenging yourself and doing different things. And yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't have a favorite because of that. I mean, my favorite thing is when I can record with other humans. When I get to do that, which is very rare, that ends up being my favorite, but not specifically a certain type of work.
Right. And how do you prepare to kind of differentiate between the roles that you're taking?
I mean, with anime specifically, the artwork kind of tunes you right in. The minute you see that, you're like, oh yeah, of course. Like that does some of the work for you, which is cool. But there's something fun about having to create something from scratch. And sometimes they're animating to you. That's pretty cool. So then there's a little more prep, but usually there's a director who you play with the voice, you play with the characteristics, how fast they talk, how much inflection they use, accents, stuff like that. So you'll play around. You hope you have a good director to work with on that kind of stuff, which is then that's the collaboration that I really enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. And how has the voiceover industry changed from like when you've started to now?
Oh, so much. So when younger people ask me how to get into it, I'm like, the way I started is nothing to do with how you're going to get into it. So I don't take my advice. When I started, you had to go, there was no option but to go into a big city with a studio where you would then go to an audition, and then you would drive all the way home, and then, or take the subway or whatever it was. And then maybe you'd have a callback. But there was so few people had a home studio. That was not a thing. Now my auditions are all from home. I can do them. I can take as much time as I want with them. But the downside is that, every audition I did, there was a casting director there who would give you feedback. adjust it. Maybe they knew what the client was looking for. It was mostly commercial auditions back then, but it was also a much smaller pool of people auditioning because you figure, okay, well, they have to have people come in. So maybe they're seeing 25 people for this 2-line role in a commercial.
Right.
Now the competition is bonkers. Yeah, there's more work, but there's more competition. So it kind of evens out.
Yeah.
But because I'm competing with someone in Switzerland or all over, our competition is all over the world, which also changes things because, it used to be like, okay, well, Tara, do these accents. Or, we would go to colleges would train you if you were a theater major, like all these accents and all this stuff. Now they're going to just get someone who does that. So I feel like I'm afraid certain things are going to become a lost art because of the way technology has changed this industry. And that's good and bad.
Right.
Like there's a fun in doing accents, but then there's also something great about doing proper, correct casting. That's
right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the art of having that accent versus, the diversity in casting, which both are great, and you have to kind of balance.
And I don't mean ethnic diversity or
right,
any of that. I just mean like, I want to play with my Russian accent. That's fun. Or
things
absolutely.
Like that. Yeah.
But in audiobooks, I get to do all of that, which is which is why I enjoy doing that sometimes, because I have to play all the characters. That's my job. So I get to do all the accent work and all that. So I get it a little, pick and choose.
Right. Yeah, that's really cool. And how do you feel about how mainstream anime has become?
It's still shocking. It's so cool. And that's a lot of what I'm doing this podcast that I'm working on about is like this boom of anime. We saw a little bit of that before. Pokemon came out and then there were like moments in time where anime was big. And this is unbelievable, though. I mean, I will go to an airport, the number of people I see wearing an anime t-shirt and obscure stuff. Like, it's crazy. I mean, even just the Pokemon. Like, I was at a museum recently. I saw just 2 kids just immediately. I didn't count as many as I saw, but as soon as I got there, immediately 2 Pokemon shirts. You go into Target, they have obscure anime t-shirts. That wasn't a thing. It's so cool. Yeah. It's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really fun to walk, like you said, into Target and see like Demon Slayer t-shirts. And even when I was growing up, that was not a thing. You were lucky if you got a Pokemon shirt at Target. You had to go like to Hot Topic. And back then, Hot Topic was a little scary,
Right. That was edgy. It was edgy.
Exactly. Yeah. And now it's everywhere.
Well, and listen, I love that there's no stigma attached. It used to not be cool to be into anime.
Right.
Now it's just another thing that you watch. But even like in the mall, I was going to buy some Funko Pops, I think at a Hot Topic. There were like Japanese inspired shops all over. And I was like, how cool is this? Like, I think it does for this generation that they're growing up in touch with more of this. Like, again, to go back to like Pokemon, they changed so much stuff so that it would appeal to an American audience. And so that it could become mainstream, which is, maybe one of the only ways it would have ever made it on the air. Now I feel like we're embracing the otherness of it, the other cultures, the other, the writing and the language and all that. And it becomes like a learning opportunity. And that's so much more interesting to me.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm jealous. Yeah, I wish I had grown up with that.
Yeah, it is really cool. And, with Pokemon, I remember seeing clips of, localizing the language and trying to make it more appealing to American kids, calling the little rice balls donuts. Well, that's like
that was what I was thinking of.
That's not correct, but in the 90s, that's like what was acceptable and what brought us into it, so it was more relatable. Now it's nice to hear that they're calling things, the correct food, and it's just like you said, it's the times. It's much more mainstream. It's easier to look things up now. In the 90s, you couldn't.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. Yeah, in the
I think
90s,
it's
you couldn't just Google.
inigiri. Is that what rice
Yeah,
inigiri? Am I saying that right?
something like
So
that. Yeah.
back then, if you had said, "Mom, what's inigiri?" Your mom would be like, I don't know. There's no Google. I can't.
Yeah.
What? How am I
Yep.
supposed to know? Go to the
Mhm.
library."
Yeah.
Um, Now, things are searchable. I think that's a huge part of it. Is that if you
Mhm.
have questions, you can get answers.
Yeah. Yeah,
That would have just
exactly.
driven mothers across America crazy.
Yes, and my mother would have been one of them, like,
Yeah,
just
there would have been a support group for mothers who didn't know what inigiri was.
yeah.
Right? Like,
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, that's so
yeah.
funny. Yeah,
I like to
100%.
think about that support group, though. That would have been a very funny support group.
Yes,
Now I want
yeah.
to write that show. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, you should. You should. I'll watch. I'll be the first one.
I'll hire your mom. Yeah.
Perfect.
Let's
Excellent.
do it.
Yes. What has been the most rewarding aspect of being a voice actor?
Oh gosh. Well, starting to do these, we work in a bubble. When we recorded Pokemon, again, we're like in a windowless booth. It's just you and maybe an engineer and a director. And I would sometimes meet kids and they would say, "Oh, I like that show." Like more my little cousins watched it or whatever. But
Mhm.
now that I'm doing conventions and meeting the fans, it's so rewarding hearing how you guys felt when you watched it. It's a lot of it's not, and listen, I know it's not about me. I get that it's like about where they were in their life. So I hear stories like my parents were going through a divorce and Pokemon was the only thing that made me happy, or
Mhm.
Yu-Gi-Oh got me through this. Like there was one that was like our house burned down and we had this we only had a Yu-Gi-Oh VHS tape to watch or whatever it was. It's just, and again, I know that's not about me. It's them needing to tell their story. And
Mhm.
it's so cool. It's cool to be a cog in that wheel. And again, there's other people who should be hearing those thank yous and those stories. And I try to I'm trying now to make sure that they do hear them, because it feels unfair for me to, and just the actors to be getting to experience that
Mhm.
when we really were the last step in the process. I think about that. I'm like, God, we just came in and we said our lines and we get the attention, and the script writer and the adapter and the engineer and the post-production, like they spent many more hours with these shows than I did, and they're the ones that made them good. So it feels unbalanced, but I
Mhm.
understand that someone has to be the representative for it.
Right.
But yeah, I'd love to shine a light on those people because they lived it
Yeah.
differently
Yeah.
than I did.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does take a lot of time. I've talked to a couple of voice actors who also have done like the ADR and who like do the script writing from,
Yeah.
translation and, writing it. And it's a lot of work and it's impressive. It's impressive work for
It's so
sure.
much work. I give them so much credit. It's a job I couldn't do, so I give them just so much respect.
Yes, absolutely. Shout
Yeah.
out to all of you. You guys are
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, and we
Absolutely.
don't even know who they are. Like, I get a script. I don't. When we're working, it doesn't say who the adapter or the writer or any of that is on there. So I never even get to say, "Hey, blah blah blah, really good job on this one," or
Hmm.
like, because sometimes in the old days we would know that, or the director would at least know, and you would know, oh, it's this person's script. They tend to write. Like fast for the lip flap or slow for the lip flap that we're matching. Oh, I know I have to slow everything down in the script because they underwrite it. Or like
Hmm.
now I don't feel like we know that stuff. Or sometimes the director will know and be like, or it's usually only when they're complaining though. It's like, oh yeah, everything's a syllable off,
Oh,
like let's add a syllable. Make sure you slow it down a little. Like, but it's a
yeah.
skill. That's not an easy skill.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so impressive. The whole dubbing process is huge and incredible to talk about and think about, and to dive into those little things. Um
So yeah.
and are you keeping up with any series right now? Are you watching anything?
No, I cannot. I watch like the opposite of anime because it feels like work, and then
Okay.
if I try, first of all, I can't watch myself. That's torture, and I'm going to have to watch. I'm going to have to watch myself soon again for this thing I'm working on, and I'm dreading it.
Oh.
Um, but even like if I just I actually, that's a lie. I watched a little bit of Jujutsu Kaisen the other night. Because I've been working on the new season, and I just was like, you know what, if you're the first one to record, you don't get the benefit of hearing how other people have said their lines. And this episode, I think I was the first one in, so I went back and I was like, I want to just hear what happened around me, and also so then when I go back next time, I kind of have their rhythms in my head a little bit better. Because especially if it's supposed to be funny, you're just hoping the director, well, first of all, directs them so that the stuff adds up. But even sometimes that there's nothing they can do. Like if I just gave them one read and it doesn't line up with, the way that the other person is delivering the other part of the joke, it's lost. And the way that we're working on such tight schedules now, like with these simul dubs, it's not like they're going to bring you back in to redo it. In the old days, maybe you would have been in for something else. So they were like, oh yeah, we have this other episode, just redo this line and get the rhythm right. I so rarely do pickups, which is like pickups is like the technical term for redoing a line, like coming in for a separate session and redoing a line. Yeah.
Okay.
So I hope that the quality doesn't suffer because we're rushing.
Right.
I don't know, because again, I can't be objective about any of it. So
right.
I guess sense. we'd hear more anger, I guess, if they were really mad. But now they can tell us when they don't like things.
Right. Yeah. And the minute you said Jujutsu, you're watching Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm like, oh yeah, you're Utahime, right? In Jujutsu Kaisen.
Oh yeah. I'm a bunch of people in that show. That's a fun one. Yeah.
Yeah, that one is great, and I do recommend that one to people who are like starting out watching anime, because I feel like it has everything, and it's not too anime, if that makes sense. Like you wouldn't tell someone to watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure as their first anime. That one's it's great, but Attack on Titan probably shouldn't be your first anime, but Jujutsu Kaisen is a good one.
Yes, that's a great point. I meet a lot of kids at conventions who are like, I love JoJo's. And I was like, why are you watching JoJo? And I look at their parents and I'm like, are you? And then I'm like, well, is stuff just going over their heads? But I'm like, I don't know. Like, what age do you think is appropriate? Right?
Kids
what age would you say for that show?
I feel like JoJo's is probably at least 14. Or
Thank
older,
you. Okay.
It's teenagery, and Jujutsu Kaisen's not really for kids, but I would watch Jujutsu Kaisen.
There's nothing bad for in it. Yeah,
right. I would watch Jujutsu Kaisen with my son in the room.
Totally.
I've watched. What else have I watched with him in the room? I've watched like Dr. Stone. Is great. It's very it's science fact based, super fun. That one great to have kids around because they actually talk about the science behind what they're doing.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Really cool. Yeah. And Jujutsu Kaisen is, it's MAPPA, so it's bloody, but that's kind of like the extent of
kids are kind of used to that now. Yeah. I think the next time a child tells me they watch JoJo's, I'm going to call Child Protective Services. I swear. It's so weird. I mean, listen, sometimes it's because they have an older sibling and they're going to want to watch what their brother's watching. I get that, but it's so jarring when they tell me. Please. I worked on that show. I almost threw up recording that show because my scene was so disgusting. I literally almost I played Death 13 and Manish Boy. I don't know if you saw that arc, but I
don't, not yet.
There's poop involved. I will not, no spoilers, but it was gross. Yeah. It was fun, but it was gross. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And some of these are definitely, they have ratings for reasons, and if you want to start out with kids, I feel like Hunter x Hunter is pretty appropriate, it's about 12-year-olds, so that's a good one.
And there's enough weird stuff in there that they feel like, oh, maybe I'm getting away with something by watching this. Like kids like to feel like they're watching something mature, even if it's not. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one too. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that about wraps it up. Thank you so much, Tara, for your time and for chatting with me.
Thank you. That was fun.
Yeah, you're welcome.